The Trolley to Yesterday by John Bellairs, Chapter 14. Fergie let out a loud yell, and he almost dropped his torch. Johnny closed his eyes and swallowed hard, and he started praying under his breath. "Angels and ministers of grace, defend us," breathed the professor. "What sort of devil magic is this?" "I am the guardian of the sunken palace," a loud echoing voice said. "I was set up here in the time of great Emperor Justinian. You must answer 3 questions if you expect to leave this place. Otherwise you will become like those in the boat near you. Are you prepared to answer?" The professor was stunned, but he was determined to remain calm. "What sort of creature are you?" he asked wearily, "and how is it that you speak English?" "I am a magic stone head placed here to guard this place against those who might try to poison the waters," a voice replied. "I speak all languages on earth." "Good God, another magic statue!" the professor whispered under his breath. "The woods are full of these, it seems." "Prof, what are we going to do?" asked Fergie. "Can't we just row on past and forget about what's-his-face up there?" The professor shook his head. "I'm afraid not. I have read about these magic guardians before, and they mean what they say. We won't get out of here alive if we don't answer the questions. It's too bad Brewster isn't here to help us, but I know a lot of odd facts, and so do you, and so does Johnny. Maybe we'll be able to outwit this vile creature." "Are you ready?" the voice intoned solemnly. "I wish to begin." The professor gritted his teeth and glared into the darkness. "All right," he growled. "What is your first question?" "Name the 7 kings of Rome." Johnny's heart leapt. He had learned these names in Latin class last year, and he knew them as well as he knew anything. Proudly he rattled off the list, beginning with Romulus and Numa Pompilius, and ending with Severus Tullius and Tarquin the Proud. After he had finished, silence fell. The boat floating next to them drifted away and began bumping into one of the stone pillars. "Very good," said the voice at last. "That is 1 question. Now for the second. Name the 7 hills of Rome." The professor turned to Johnny. "Well," he whispered, "do you know these?" Johnny's brain raced. He had learned the names once on a Latin test, but could he dredge them up all at once? "Quirinal, Viminal, Capitoline," he began in a quavering voice. "That is only 3, said the voice nastily. "Oh, give him a chance, for heaven's sake!" exclaimed the professor. He's only just gotten started." "Very well," said the voice. "Proceed." Johnny glanced to his left. To his horror, he saw that the boat with the dead bodies in it was moving closer. His mind went blank. He could not have remembered his own name if someone had asked him what it was. Fergie was sitting at the other end of the boat, and he leaned forward to whisper in the professor's ear. Quickly, the professor scrambled to Johnny's side. "He says Palatine and Esquiline," the professor hissed anxiously. "I heard that," said the voice pompously. "It does not matter who answers as long as the reply is correct." "Palatine and Esquiline are correct. That makes 5. 2 more are needed. Please proceed. A prompt answer would be appreciated." The professor glared hatefully into the darkness. If this wretched stone had had a neck, he would gladly wring it. 2 more. 2 more. Maybe he could help after all. He had taught Roman history at one time. The professor's brain raced, and the other boat drifted closer and closer. An awful silence fell. "Calian and Aventine," the professor screeched. "Am I right?" "You are," said the voice in a bored tone. "And now, there is but 1 question left. Name the present emperor of Byzantium." The professor grinned. This was a home-run pitch thrown right across the middle of the plate. "Constantine the 11th, Dragasus Palaeologus," he said, rolling the name out grandly and triumphantly. More silence. Would the stone head be satisfied? They waited tensely and tried not to look at the hideous thing that was floating on the water near them. "You may pass," said the voice at last. "Thank you for your cooperation." The boat that had been floating nearby vanished. Once again a cold breeze began to blow, making Fergie's torch flicker. With a deep, heartfelt sigh of relief, the professor picked up the oars and started rowing again. In silence, they moved past more pillars, until at last they saw up ahead a broad flight of cracked marble steps that rose up out of the water. At the top of the steps, a stout wooden door stood half open, and beyond it more steps could be seen. In a niche near the door stood an enormous stone head, with blank eyeballs that stared eerily at them. "That must be the thingamajig that gave us all the trouble," whispered Fergie. "It is indeed," the head muttered with a trace of amusement in its voice. "Please have a nice day." The boat drifted closer to the flight of stone steps. With a sudden lunge, Fergie reached out and grabbed an iron ring that was bolted to the bottom step, and he pulled the boat tight against the landing. Nimbly, the professor hopped out with the valise in his hand. Johnny threw the sword up onto the steps, and then he clambered out too. Fergie went last, as the other two held the boat close for him. As quickly as they could, they scrambled up the steps. The professor tugged at the door's iron handle, and with a lot of ominous creaking and groaning, it swung wide. The light of Fergie's torch showed the start of a winding stone staircase. They started climbing. The darkness gave way to faint daylight, and they began to hear noises, yelling, and the clash of arms. And in the distance, the booming of a great cannon. "My lord!" gasped the professor as he paused and tried to catch his breath. "It doesn't sound good at all." He struggled to the top of the stairs. At last they came out into broad daylight in a room at the top of a tall stone tower. The tower was built into the inner line of the city's walls, and from its windows Johnny and the others could see a battle raging below them. The Sultan's great cannon had battered a wide hole in the outer walls, and through the gap thousands of soldiers were streaming in. The professor turned pale. He had read a lot about the siege of Constantinople, and he knew what was happening. This was the final attack. Before long, the city would be in the hands of looting, angry, bloodthirsty men. Panicked, the professor led the boys out through an arch and onto a broad walkway that ran along the top of the inner walls. Then the three of them stopped dead and stared in horror. Running along the wall toward them was a yelling mob of Turkish soldiers, and at its lead, waving a flashing sword, was Baltoglu, their old enemy. And that's the end of chapter 14.